I would give every drop of blood in my veins to free them. Harriet Tubman is considered one of the heroes in American history, who is a well known abolitionist who fought for the freedom of enslaved black people. She embodied resilience, determination, perseverance, and fighting for what's right. Her efforts allowed around 70 to 300 enslaved black people to break free from the shackles of slavery. Harriet was born into a family of 9, and at that time, her name was in fact Minty. Her father, Ben Ross, worked at a plantation, whereas her mother worked as a slave in a house. The house in which Minty's mother worked was considered the big house, which is why she barely got time to spend with her family. This meant that Minty was the one responsible to take care of her little siblings. This was until she was sold to an owner at the age of 6, where she had to take care of a small child. There, she was subject to many whippings and harsh punishments. Every time the baby cried, Minty was whipped. However, Minty was quite rebellious, and she would often fight back, and sometimes wear extra layerings to protect herself from the whippings. Fast forward a few years, Minty was married to a free black man known as John Tubman in 1944. This is when Minty renamed herself as Harriet Tubman, naming herself after her mother. The marriage, however, was rather a complicated one. The reason behind this was that the mother's status dictated that of the child. This meant that as the mother of their future children, Minty's enslaved status would be carried on to their children as well. Considering that half the African American population was free at that time, including John Tubman, this situation made things between the couple quite complex. One of the most notable incidents in Harriet's life was that of the metal weight. It is described that once an overseer got infuriated at a fugitive slave and threw a metal weight at him. However, the overseer missed and the metal weight hit Harriet in the head instead. The painful event had a huge impact on Harriet's life as it caused her to suffer hypersomnia, where she would often fall asleep for prolonged periods of time. What she suffered is now known as narcolepsy. Harriet described it as something that cracked her skull open, causing painful headaches. However, this condition allowed her to see certain things. Harriet said that with this condition, she used to have visions and dreams in which God spoke to her and guided her as to what she should do. It is through these very same visions that she was told to free those who were enslaved. Due to her condition, Harriet would often fall asleep during work and start feeling ill. This led to her owner putting her up for sale, but no one seemed to be interested in buying her. Hence, she was handed over to her father, where she worked with him at the plantation. Here, she was taught the skill of being a lumberjack, and during her work, she was told by some men who transported wood along the railroads about a special underground railroad system which helped to free enslaved black people. In 1949, Harriet's owner passed away. The widow of the owner decided to sell all the slaves, which was terrible news for Harriet, as this would mean that her family would be split up and be given to different owners. Harriet looked at this through a lens which gave her two options: death or liberty. She decided to take the chance and chose liberty. Along with two of her brothers, Harriet decided to escape from Maryland towards up north, but the attempt was unsuccessful as the three of them eventually got lost and felt bad for leaving their family behind. After they returned, Harriet had a dream where she could fly just like a bird. This was supposed to be a vision or guidance from God, as what she saw was the correct path to freedom from the sky. With the newly discovered route, Harriet once again set out on her mission to freedom, this time alone. She made use of the Underground Railroad, which was a collection of safe houses, boat captains, and wagon drivers, which included freed African Americans as well as white Americans who were willing to take fugitive slaves up north. Harriet found her road to freedom along this railroad, stopping house after house, pretending to work at different farms until she finally got a taste of freedom when she arrived in Philadelphia. After escaping to Philadelphia, Harriet worked various odd jobs to make money. Something that still bothered her was the fact that she was away from her family. She didn't like the fact that she got to now live a free life while her family back in Maryland were still enslaved. This led her to engage in a series of expeditions to retrieve her family and many others as well along the way. In 1951, Harriet set out on the railroad network to save her parents from the cruelty of slavery. She arrived in Maryland and took her parents back to Philadelphia from there. Witnessing her success, Harriet made 13 different trips back to Maryland and led over 70 people to their escape, including her family members such as her brothers and their wives. She made use of various methods to disguise herself as a slave running errands in order to avoid attention. It was due to these heroic expeditions that Harriet Tubman soon gained the nickname Moses. Apart from her rescues, Harriet also had many other significant social contributions. She served as a spy, scout, and nurse for the Union Army in the 1961 Civil War, as she envisioned that a victory would lead to the abolishment of slavery. She also helped an abolitionist named John Brown recruit members for a small group of men who were trained to conduct raids to revolt against slavery and free enslaved people by force. Brown referred to Harriet as General Tubman, who contributed her tactics and knowledge of networks such as the Underground Railroad. In her later years, Tubman worked towards advocating for women's suffrage. She also took part in campaigns which were targeted towards giving African American women the right to vote. The story of our hero was now coming to an end. Her childhood trauma had still not stopped bothering her, as she still felt pain from the metal weight that had hit her when she was a child. She got it operated in the 1890s and described it as a painful experience where her skull was sawed open. She was then admitted into a rest home in 1911 and died of pneumonia in 1913. Her last words were a quote from the Gospel of John stating, "I go away to prepare a place for you." The United States Treasury announced in 2016 that Harriet's face would be featured on the redesigned $20 bill, which goes to show the significance of her efforts in the US history. Her tale will now live on to inspire many others to stand up for what is right, no matter how bad the situation can get, and take the lesson that we must endure our pains.